Mom? Mom, is that you?
There, Chris. You've been asleep for almost 9 hours.
I had a horrible nightmare. I dreamt I went back in time. I was reviewing old comics and then I got kidnapped. I was fighting bad guys alongside other reviewers. It was horrible.
Well, you're safe and sound now, back in good old 1984.
1984? How can I best explain what just happened to me? Maybe if I compared it to Marvel's 1984 to 1985 crossover, The Secret Wars, and talk about the top 10 awesome moments. And maybe, just maybe, I'll explain how I got into this black shirt too. Before we get into details, here's what you need to know. The Marvel Superhero Secret Wars was the first major, and I mean major crossover event Marvel had ever done before 1984, and the first major company-wide crossover, period. You can pretty much thank the Secret Wars for being the mother of all company-wide crossover events, both good and not so good. Sure, the heroes would team up every once in a while, fight bad guys, save the day, and be home in time for cornflakes. This was the first time every major Marvel hero in the early 80s were unified against a common threat. This was huge. Everyone was involved. Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Avengers, and 3/4 of the Fantastic Four were to engage in battle with the odd assortment of Marvel's deadliest villains, led by Doctor Doom himself. Their job? Fight for the amusement of a cosmic entity called the Beyonder, who promised all sorts of rewards for the victor. In fact, here's what he said.
I am from beyond. Slay your enemies and you shall be rewarded. Nothing you dream is impossible for me to accomplish.
I can see it now. Hey Spidey, how would you like your uncle back from the dead? Ooh, sorry, how would you like a free car instead? Real cheap too. So, how did this awesome crossover come about anyway? Our story begins in the early 80s when boys' action figures were getting a huge surge in popularity. G.I. Joe, Transformers, and the Masters of the Universe lines were a big hit. Pew pew! Take that, Skywarp! Ha! You missed, Red Alert! Yeah, I can vouch for that. I got more proof up in the attic. Eventually someone from Kenner connected the dots between action figures and superheroes, and we got the DC Superpowers line. A line of toys I never got into. So sue me for liking Transformers a wee bit more back then. With the success of the DC Superpowers line, another hotshot toy exec went to Marvel Comics and said, "Hey, we want to make toys out of your heroes so kids can have them and the DC heroes destroy the inferior toy lines." No, that would have been crazy. Crazy awesome. Not that I ever did something like that. What actually happened was that the execs saw how great the DC toys were doing, so they said, Marvel should have some of that action. However, there was a catch. The other toy company wanted to only use the major players in the Marvel Universe. Marvel Editorial wanted to link the toys and the comics all together by creating the first company-wide crossover event. Crossovers and team-ups occurred before, sure. However, this was the first time in history that various characters from their entire line met up, had a huge story spanning across 12 issues, and had an aftermath that is still being felt today. While the line of toys didn't do as well as Marvel had hoped, the Secret Wars comic itself proved to be a huge hit and one of the best-selling comics of all time. Why? I'll tell you. In a top 10 list showing what I think are the best moments from the crossover that really define just how epic this story was. Enough with the yammering already. Let's take a look at the mother of all crossover events, the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars. Number 10. The new Spider-Woman arrives. Remember last video when I talked about Jessica Drew, the first Spider-Woman? There's a reason why I put burst in there.
One was created as a bid to keep a copyright and had all sorts of weird adventures in the 70s. By the 80s, Jessica had retired and became a private eye. Because of this, a new Spider-Woman was introduced in the pages of the Secret Wars to once again keep the copyright. Since Jess was out, in came Julia Carpenter, the second Spider-Woman. She had the ability to cling to walls, fire psionic webs, and was super strong. Spidey kind of wondered what her deal was, and even joked about whether or not he needed to patent the spider thing. Heh, talk about meta. Julia arrived on Battleworld, the planet the Beyonder created using bits and pieces of other planets, from a suburb of Denver, Colorado.
You might be wondering why the Beyonder didn't take Florida. I think he has standards.
Julia makes this list because she was a wild card, as she could have easily been another villain for the heroes to fight. She put an end to that line of thinking and flat out said that she was there to help because the Secret Wars were dangerous to spectators and she had to protect her friends. Some of the heroes, though, kind of distrusted her. It's alright, because eventually Julia proved herself a hero by fighting alongside Earth's mightiest. And though Doom transformed two other denizens of the suburb into villains, she never faltered from the task at hand. And hey, she even stalled the Hulk when he was sleepwalking. Yes, the Hulk sleepwalked, while under the control of a mysterious light. It was weird, and yet not the weirdest thing that has happened in this crossover. Nevertheless, it still showcased her powers, and proved that she will stand up to anyone, even the strongest one there is, and villains like the Absorbing Man. She may have been a wild card, but she still proved to be a worthy successor to Jessica Drew. Number 9, the Thing constantly changing from Ben Grimm into the Thing.
This is where we find out that the Beyonder is the biggest cosmic troll ever.
While everyone was fighting the good fight, Ben Grimm, otherwise known as the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing, found that he was randomly able to transform from human to his monstrous form and back again. His teammates were confused, and Reed had his own theories as to why it happened. Of course, he kept it to himself. Why would the world's greatest royal smart person tell his best friend the real reason why he was able to change? That would have been sensible. Or maybe he just wanted to spare his feelings, I don't know. Ben was initially happy about his random transformation to human form, but he quickly found it to be a burden whenever the team needed him to do something, like punch out someone or do some heavy lifting, because Lord knows the Hulk wasn't always in a cooperative mood.
Hulk do heavy lifting at number 4 of Countdown. Hulk not sure what he is doing with his hands.
By the end of the story, Ben found himself in a dangerous situation when one of the villainous Claw's hard light constructs has him on the ropes. He's losing his orange rocks fast, and She-Hulk rushes to his aid, knowing that Ben cannot hold the beast at bay for long. Ben summons up enough nerve to finally be able to halt the transformation, returns to his Thing form, and clobbers the creature. Ecstatic, Ben revels in his newfound abilities, and is finally able to help win the day without worrying if he'll randomly change back and forth again. In the end, Ben decided to stay on Battleworld for a while, since he was able to transform. Obviously he returned, but you can imagine being able to go back and forth with a dream come true for the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing. Seeing this moment earned it a place in the number 9 spot. Number 8, the Heroes vs. Galactus.
What does it take for Earth's mightiest to stop fighting Dr. Doom for 1 second?
How about when the World Eater Galactus decides he will win the Beyonders game by not siding with anyone and just do what he does best? Consume planets. With Battleworld made up of different worlds, you can bet it'd be like a buffet to the big guy, right? You know, a piece of this planet here and a piece there. Another piece might be too fattening and go right to his thighs. Oh, and that suburb of Denver too. He never does manage to eat Earth, and now he can have a small part of it. If only it was that simple. Galactus figures that the Beyonder would be able to satiate his need to feed on other worlds if he won the game. Instead of just watching both sides beat each other up, Galactus decides to end the game by feeding. Talk about the ultimate game over moment. With no way off the planet, and civilians like the alien village the group camped in as well as the suburbanites running around, it was up to Reed and the other heroes to convince Galactus to stop trying to eat the patchwork planet.
You know, guys, when the firestorm comes, I'm sure the Big G will help you all get home. He seems like a cool guy.
Or not? Yeah, like Galactus would be that cool. Come on, guys, he's the force of nature. He's not gonna turn up his nose at a buffet. Everyone fights Galactus' drones and damages the planet-eating machine long enough that it causes the World Eater to pause for a second, and he teleports Reed away to his ship. He tells him that he must feed, for he's the force of death, in contrast to Reed and the others being a force of life. Galactus shows Richards his family, including his pregnant wife Susan, and sends him on his way. Confused, he and the others decide whether or not to continue fighting the cosmic entity, and decide it's for the best, despite the odds being clearly against them.
Gotta give these heroes credit for persistence.
At the last moment, the Big G decides to eat his own spaceship and absorbs energy from it before returning to Battle World. Elsewhere, Doom has devised a way to use Claw, a being made of pure sound energy, to absorb the energy the ship's getting off, and thus granting him cosmic powers. Everyone scrambles as Galactus seemingly flees, and Doom is left more powerful than ever. What does he do with that power? Wait until number 4. It's going to shock you, as Doom ups the stakes a wee bit more. Number 7, Magneto tries to prove he isn't a huge jerk and gets owned by the Wasp.
You know what the Secret Wars really needed? Wasp kicking butt.
When the teams were decided, the Master of Magnetism, Magneto, found himself among the good guys. A casual reader at this time would be like, hey, why is he with him? Well, the truth is, Magneto has always been in the gray area between good and bad. He just did things for the greater good. Actually, he just didn't want to take part in the silly war, and even refused to team up with Doom, citing that their agendas are clearly different.
Yeah, one guy wants to take over the world, and one guy wants to take over the world for his kind. Completely different goals.
In an act of good faith, Eric decides to visit the heroes to see if the mutants and humans can work together, as he feels both races might share the same feeling with their heart as he does. Things go awry as he tears up the heroes' base and captures the winsome Wasp. Once the two are alone, he tries to convince Jan that he isn't the monster everyone thinks he is. Sadly, we don't actually see him explain himself. After telling Doom off for the upteenth time, we get a sort of uncomfortable sequence as Eric tries to put the moves on Janet. She fights valiantly, and then succumbs to his charms. When the X-Men arrive to talk to Magneto, he explains how the mutants should team up and defeat Doom and usher in a new golden age for Earth, where mutants and humans can live in peace. He says Jan agrees with him, and she's like, no I didn't. And she pinches his cheeks, shrinks the Wasp's eyes, and makes a break for it while simultaneously taking out the X-Men. It only gets worse for the X-Men later in the story. At least we see the Wasp show that she isn't some ditzy heroine. She was, and always can be, a force to be reckoned with. Number 6, Spidey beats up the X-Men.
Wasp wasn't the first insect or arachnid-based hero to beat the X-Men.
Spider-Man took on the mutants when he saw them camping out in their quaint little corner of their base, far away from the others. Once there, he overhears the X-Men discussing the need to take matters into their own hands, since they don't belong here. The Avengers are a bit suspicious of Rogue, since it wasn't that long ago that she fought them. Wolverine vouches for her by saying that she's an X-Man now, and if anyone fights her, they'll have to answer to him. At the end of the discussion, Professor X says that they should team up with Magneto. Hearing this, Spidey jumps into the fray. The X-Men try to explain things, and Spidey just doesn't want to hear it. He easily takes out Colossus and Rogue with webbing, jumps down and takes out Nightcrawler, and then down goes Wolverine. Luckily, all he was trying to do is get away, and as he does so, Cyclops fires an optic blast. Quickly, the webhead finds Reed Richards and tries to explain what happened. The problem is, he forgot, as Professor X wiped his mind clean of what just happened. Don't worry, they remembered the licking they got from him and Wasp in the next issue. The X-Men just can't catch a break on Battle World. At least this moment showed that Spidey can hold his own in a fight against the X-Men. And though they broke away from the rest of the heroes, they do rejoin the group for the battle against Galactus.
Professor X, you really are a jerk, by the way.
Comic Showcase will return after these messages.